So, as we can hear from the protesters, they're against corruption. Some would argue that corruption is so enmeshed in the sectarian, confessional political system. Can it be combated without really dismantling the whole political system of the country?
I think it's beyond corruption by far, and what the government currently is trying to do is trying to suggest a few reforms, thinking that it's only a matter of reforms and stopping any addition to taxation, which they've already admitted to and retreated from that position. But I think it's important to take it into context. The current government got the support of all but 7 members of parliament. They got 121 votes out of a possible 128. So this government really represents all of the committees or all of the parties that are represented in parliament. So what we're looking at today, the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who've been protesting for the past 3 days, is just a huge shout of discrediting the entire government and the parliament that created this government. So I think this goes beyond corruption and just a few deals that have instigated all those protests. This is a lack of trust in the system, and the calls go far beyond just corruption. They're calling for early elections. They're calling for a change of government immediately. They're calling for an election of a new president, plus an accountability for all the funds that have been stolen. And that's why we have $85,000 billion of debt, one of the biggest amounts of debt versus GDP. So I believe what we're seeing today in Lebanon is a huge realignment on political legitimacy.
Can the system survive, and would early elections change anything? Because they'd be held along the exact same sectarian confessional system and lines.
Yes, it will change a lot. This happened back in 2005. The Ba'ath army was in Lebanon at the time, as well as the intelligence services. The majority of parliament was elected by a law that was set up during Syrian hegemony of Lebanon. And yet, in 2005, after the murder and assassination of the late Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri, what happened was a huge movement. The government was toppled. A technocratic government ruled for exactly 4 months with the only task of organizing new elections based on the old law. But the general direction of the population shifted the balance in parliament to absolutely anti-Syrian regime, and that was the change which was known at the time as the Cedar Revolution. So I think the precedence has happened there, plus historically,
yeah, but this is, with all due respect, this is very
60s,
different
and 70s
right now.
Again.
The protests are not aimed at another army being asked to leave the country. This is aimed, as you yourself explained, against the very political class, the political system, the parties that have the support, or the government that has the support of almost all members of parliament. In order for there to be change, how can that happen with the same elections following the same old system?
Like any government in the world, like any system in the world, the base of power in any democracy lies with the people. And the people have spoken, I believe, in this case. And I think a lot of political parties, especially now with the resignation of the first 4 ministers and the tendering of the potential resignation of the Prime Minister and others, we see there's a massive shift, and people feel, those in government feel, they are losing all public support around them. This will create a new reality in Lebanon. And as things show now, the balance of powers, when they shift and public attitude moves, then there will be a new formation of political power and legitimacy. This current government now cannot, as it seems, offer anything substantial to regain people's trust. So even if the political parties that are incumbent now want to retain power, they have to go through a massive shift in the composition of the type of government they create. With the faces currently known associated with corruption, associated with sectarianism, there is no way they can gather enough legitimacy for the people in the street to do them. Their only alternative is to use violence, which they try to exercise on Friday evening, and I believe those are the elements that are being challenged now. Is violence an option for this government to retain its control, or does it go through a major revamp of its policies? And third, do we go for a new government that actually has legitimacy with new faces? Those are the options of the current political class versus the shouts from the streets basically saying we want to go far more and further than just a taxation policy. We want to go to establish a new legitimate political representation system, intern government, organize early elections, and let's reconstitute political power in this country.
All right, thank you for your analysis on that. Mark Daou.